then, I do hope you're all well. In the last video, where we had the experts in different fields of the food and drink industry, so to speak, where they give their views about what they thought about this new New Zealand free trade agreement deal. And let's just say, most of them weren't that impressed, were they? Well, in this video, the topic of conversation turned to food security, and from what I could gather about our food standards. Now, those who were saying that they didn't think this was beneficial, so to speak, that's what most of it was both from the agricultural and sheep farming, and this guy, Paul Dawson, pay particular attention to what he has to say. And it's something that a lot of people, and I think I've thought the very same thing, he said it as well. Very interesting.
Thanks. Just before I turn to Mike Wood, and I think Ukraine takes this into sharper focus, but I wonder if Peter and David, I find it shocking, I wonder if you do, that when we have spoken to the trade negotiators in both the New Zealand and the Australian trade deal, no consideration at all was given to food security. None. It's just not in part of their negotiating brief. What's your reaction to that sort of information? David, maybe then Peter.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? I think obviously the focus is very much on the economic benefit, isn't it, for the UK as a whole, looking across all economies, and the observation that agriculture is the sacrificial lamb probably is our observation as well in all of this. So that could have a detrimental impact on UK food security. Obviously, improving trade with relatively stable democracies who produce food like Australia and New Zealand is good for our overall food security to have access to trade with those countries in the realm. But what we need to do is be sure that we're careful not to damage our own domestic production when we do that. And the reality is we're striking lots of trade deals at the minute, and the initial ones at least are with they're not the countries I would choose, let's put it that way, from a purely agricultural perspective, and I appreciate the government has to look at broader issues than just agriculture.
So I think the government will take trade deals where it can, isn't that? Phil, I see you want to come in, and I'll take in before I take in Peter, just in case your hand's been legacy and longer. So,
thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to raise the point that David made, or back David up on the point that he made, really, about the importance of that investment in new trade opportunities for us as well. Because if we're opening ourselves up to more New Zealand and Australian land coming into the UK, we've got no alternative, really, no other option than to be seeking other trade export opportunities. And there's nothing that's being done at the same scale as we're opening up those import opportunities for New Zealand and Australia. And I think it's also worth recognising that our ability, although the volumes are creeping up back into the European Union, our exports into the European Union are nowhere near as easy and as free flowing as they used to be. So we are losing our export opportunities. We're not gaining them at the same pace as we're, in a way, opening our market up to other people. And collectively, it's worth just considering that collectively at the end of that 15-year transition period, both Australia and New Zealand could actually fill the total consumption volume of lamb and sheep meat that we consume here in the UK. And I think just relating to that, back to the question that you've raised a couple of times, Chairman, about food security, in this push towards global trade, we've learned, haven't we, over this last 12 months, just how important food security and food resilience is to us. And if we go too far down that road of being obstructing everything from a production level to a processing level to global trade, and then suddenly we have this volatility, can our food systems really support our food needs? And I think we have to keep our eye on that ball very, very closely. Thank you.
Peter, instead of taking on the point of lack of thought of food security in the negotiations.
Well, it doesn't seem to have informed government policy. There just seems to be a generalised rush to secure free trade agreements as soon as possible with any partners willing to line up for it. I mean, the whole logic of trade liberalisation is generally true when there's a sort of a stable international order where people recognise the benefits of open trade and isn't contested by those parties who suddenly believe welfare is pursued by appropriating their territory of neighbouring countries. So it all starts to fall down. And in terms of how we can achieve food security, I don't think we'd argue for striving towards self-sufficiency, because that's just not within our power. We don't have the productive capacity for it. But it would be rationally, would have thought, to minimise our exposure to the risks of an unstable situation, an unstable world market. And one thing we haven't seen yet falling out of the Ukraine crisis, which we might, if it continues to develop in the way it does, unfortunately, is export bans. One or two countries did announce them, but they seem to have retreated from that position, and that will become a real test of the sort of international trading order in agri-food products, and I hope we don't find ourselves facing that challenge. But once we do, I think we'll have to reconsider exactly what our objectives are in terms of our free trade agreements.
Yeah, there's sort of like in the pandemic when countries had the impulse not to export at all, which was all contrary to a lot of trade understanding we had up to that point. Lloyd Russell-Moll, you want to come in briefly for?
There you go. I've been thinking that very same thing for a while myself. We just seem to be doing deals on a whim, don't we? Most rational people know that for really good, beneficial free trade deals, they're going to take years out there and then some. We all remember how they made a big deal out of that Australian new free trade deal agreement where you saw our bodge stood in front of a camera doing, "Hello, pick up a Tim Tam." An idiot. And you saw that conversation he had with New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, sorry if I get the teeth in, and the way she was just basically pandering to his ego, because that's what you need to do with people with big egos. Just pander to it and they fold like a deck of cards and you just get everything you want, don't you? But anyway, I suppose I know what they voted for. Oh, well, but never mind. I shall leave the video here and hope you enjoyed it. And until the next time, I shall, bid you farewell and take care.